It's truly mind-boggling how inconsistent the Hoyoverse fanbase is when it comes to criticism. The topic of discussion going around now is that Natlan characters are too white, and that Genshin Impact devs have a problem, and it's specifically the Genshin Impact dev team that is the main issue at Hoyoverse. I pose the question, well, what about Hoyoverse's other games, like HSR, Honkai 3rd, and Zenless Zone Zero? Pretty much all Hoyo playable characters are light-skinned, with a few minor exceptions being the upcoming Ian-san from Genshin and Arlen from HSR. And it seems to me that the main issue that keeps coming up is that because Genshin draws from real-world mythology and culture, that it's specifically egregious in its whitewashing. I thought about this for a little bit, and then I was reminded of Penacony from HSR. This area is specifically inspired from 1920s America, which is well before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Segregation in America during these years was a widespread practice. So I wonder why there wasn't outrage when Penacony wasn't accurately represented in HSR. Instead, people were totally fine with the glorification of Penacony and that era of American culture, all while turning a blind eye to the reality of what America was truly like back then when it came to racism. Now, you could be saying to me, well, that's just a ridiculous argument. And then I would pose the counter question, well, what if a game or a work of fiction drew inspiration off the period of Germany from the mid-1930s till the end of World War II? And whatever piece of fiction that game portrayed of the National Socialist Party of Germany was only the glamorous side, where their leaders staved off the pangs of the Great Depression and made promises to the people of bringing Germany back to greatness. You would say that is truly ridiculous, because if you spoke about Germany during that period, you would have to include the horrors and atrocities that Germany committed to the Jewish people and to non-German prisoners of war. So where was the portrayal of segregation during Penacony? Someone pointed out to me that the area of the Dreamflux Reef is the portrayal of segregation. But I have to disagree completely. The people in the Dreamflux Reef were not separated based on the color of their skin, which is what segregation was all about in the pre-Civil Rights Act America. Why is it okay that HSR is perfectly fine to leave out the real concept of segregation, but Genshin is being lambasted for whitewashing its characters? Hiding the cruelty from accurate cultural representation is just as bad, or if not worse, than race swapping a character. As far as other games not presenting appropriate representation of fictional characters, especially in the form of mythological deities, one game franchise comes to mind: Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy draws inspiration from real-world mythology and cultures all the time in many of its titles. Shiva is a reoccurring character in Final Fantasy games, being represented by a female god who's attuned to the element of ice. In Hindu culture, Shiva is known as Mahadeva, within the Trimurti, which also includes Brahma and Vishnu. He really doesn't have anything to do with ice per se, and he's not depicted as being a female deity. Yet for years, nobody was outraged at the portrayal of Shiva in the Final Fantasy franchise. So I'm not sure why so many people are upset at the portrayal of gods and deities having to have a particular skin tone, when I'm fairly certain that a lot of these people who are outraged are most likely atheists, and gods in mythology are fictional characters to them inside or outside any form of media. Now, before you get enraged at me and call me a racist, I want to present a possible situation that could happen in a piece of fictional media. This hypothetical situation would involve a character in the Bhagavad Gita named Krishna, and Krishna reveals to another character named Arjuna that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Basically, Krishna tells Arjuna that he is God. Krishna is depicted as a being with blue skin. Now, if some anime or video game or other piece of fictional media which will portray or take direct inspiration from Krishna, should that character have blue skin? Who will be outraged if that character doesn't have blue skin? Who's going to come to the defense of people with blue skin that aren't being properly represented? Well, this sort of happened in Final Fantasy XIV. They made Krishna into an inanimate object in the form of some chakrams. Look, I'm not just trying to mock people for their arguments of representation, but I am pointing out that people are just being a bit fanatical with their demands in regards to skin color. All I'm saying is just be consistent with your criticism. If you plan to boycott Genshin Impact because you feel like Natlan characters are too white, then I really hope you're not planning to spend money in Hoyo versus other games. The truth of the matter is, China itself is probably a very insular country. It's not one particular dev team of one particular company. Some people might point out that there's some CN games like Art Knights and Reverse 1999 that have some dark-skinned characters. But that doesn't change the fact that China as a whole probably has some form of xenophobia. A side note is that I also believe the CCP might have a hand in Genshin itself. You could call me crazy, but a while back there was talk about Venti's design being forcibly changed because some people in China thought Venti was too feminine a character to be considered male. And a lot of the character designs in Genshin got censored, one in particular being Jean. Jean in Genshin is a portrayal of a female in a political position of power. Her being covered up might be a direct reference to CCP interference. It's not uncommon for there to be checks and balances within Chinese companies that can hold significant influence in China itself. Now, whether or not direct CCP involvement is real in regards to Genshin, we'll never truly know. All I can say is that you're free to have your opinion and voice whatever concerns you think are valid. You live in a country where freedom of speech is celebrated. Unfortunately, China is not one of those countries. If you choose to consume media from a country that's not your own, you may, and most likely will come across ideologies that don't align with yours. When you're asking Hoyoverse to change, I believe you're essentially asking China to change. So I honestly wouldn't expect there to be any significant movement in this recent backlash against Natlan character designs. The only real thing you can do to influence them is to stop playing the game and stop giving them money. But like I said earlier, if you're going to boycott Genshin but still give money to Hoyoverse anyways through their other games, are you really boycotting? That's just something to ask yourself. I will make one final defense of myself because I suspect I may be accused of being a racist after making and posting this video. So I will say that in my favorite movie, the main character is a black man. That movie is none other than The Shawshank Redemption. And no, Tim Robbins' character is not the main character. Morgan Freeman's character has more lines of dialogue and he narrates the entire movie. Red, played by Morgan Freeman, is the main character of The Shawshank Redemption. Not only that, but the character Red in the original short story by Stephen King was a white Irishman with red hair, hence the character being named Red. So the movie version of this character is actually a race-swapped character, and it was absolutely the right choice, because Morgan Freeman is an amazing actor. But when I watch this movie, I don't even think about race at all. I'm not thinking about these characters' skin colors. That's not the point of this movie. It's a movie about the power of hope and friendship, and never giving up even when the world is against you. It's, in my opinion, the greatest motion picture ever made. I'll end this video with an interview of Morgan Freeman's response to his take on racial ideology in America. And I hope that we can maybe step back a bit and have a more nuanced take instead of trying to force our opinions on others. Perhaps then we won't be so upset at things that don't immediately go our way.
Black History Month, you find Ridiculous.
Why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? No, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Do you want one?
No.
I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism?
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man.